What's up, everybody? I'm Avatage, and welcome to the new episode of the HLTB podcast. I am, of course, joined as always by Pokepaw, aka Paula.
Hey, everyone.
And today we're going to do the usual, talking about some games we've been playing and retiring and beating and that sort of thing. We've got actually quite a spread going on today. And then we're going to get into a bit of a discussion about how do you cope after you've just finished that game that just you can't put down, and you end up having that feeling of just a void in your life because something amazing has happened. And how do you move on and pick up another game or do something else or fill that void in some other way, perhaps? And then Paul is going to quiz me, and I'm going to see if I can make up some points in our guessing game and actually not get completely destroyed as I have been. But yeah, that's the plan. Thanks for joining us. And Paula, tell us all about what you've beaten in the last week or so.
Well, so this week has been very, very productive, and I finished a couple of games. First of all is Kingdom
Nice.
New Lands, the one that I was talking about last week. So again,
Yep.
for those who haven't tuned in the latest episodes, which by the way, it is already live. I mean, it is a previous episode, so it has to be live. I'm an idiot.
It'll definitely be out before anyone's hearing this.
Definitely. Oh my god, it is so early. I did it to myself though. So in Kingdom New Lands, well, it is a sequel to Kingdom, or like a refinement of the formula. And you are a king or a queen, a monarch, let's say. And you have to protect the crown from the... I think they're called greed or greedlings, like these small little monsters that want your crown and want to run away with it. So in the end, everything you do is to protect the crown. You have to build your little kingdom. You have to recruit beggars to build up your kingdom and have more people to help to aid you in your quest. And then you have to escape each of the 5 islands of the game. Along the way, you can find extra little things, like you can get a map to unlock a new feature or a new NPC and stuff like that, or a new steed. So for example, I unlocked the Warhorse. Oh my god, the Warhorse is so fucking cool. Because it inspires units as to not to run away sometimes. And I think the archers get like a better aim, but I'm not entirely sure. But just for a good measure, I inspired all my units every time there was a battle. The last island, though, oh my god, it was a challenge to say the least. It took me like 5 tries to get right. I had to reset a couple more times because since it is randomly generated and I didn't have the Baker Hermit, I had to make sure that the beggar camp was nearby. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to progress through the level. Beggar camps are where you can get a couple of new people every day. Like you see like the beggars running around, and you give them a coin and they will follow you to the kingdom. And the thing is that the bakery allows you to lure in the beggars without having to go to the farthest camps. Beggars are invulnerable to greed, but once they grab a coin and turn into a proper villager, they can get turned into beggars again by the greedlings, like taking that coin away from them and their equipment and stuff like that. So that's one thing you have to always keep an eye on. You don't want your units like your builders to be out late into the night unless you already destroyed the portals on that side of the map, because greedlings will just turn them into beggars again and you will lose units, which happened in one of my runs. Everything was going well until I accidentally destroyed the beggar camp. So each Vega camp has to be between 2 trees for it to not vanish. So I sometimes absorb a Vega camp into my village by building a wall at the other side of it. And then I don't have to go out of the village to get more people. I accidentally, instead of giving the coin to the Vega, put the coin into the tree, and that prompted one of my builders to destroy it. Thus, I was not able to recruit more people. And unluckily for me, the next Vega camp was 2 portals away from me. So they were both too far to get back into the village in less than a day. And also I couldn't get to them because there was greed all over the place before I could get to them. So those were sad times. And that was a good run. So I was very, very salty when I lost because of me not being careful enough. And the final run, I ended up just running to the chip, the straight chip that you have to repair each time you want to leave the island, putting enough coins for me to be able to see which way the chip was facing, and then run on that way and destroying all 3 portals on that side of the map and getting the hell out of that there. That was pretty much my modus operandi for the last map. That's why I recommend you to do in the last map, because I feel like each time you destroy a portal, the wave of gridlings and grid trolls, I don't know how to call them, but they're huge grid monsters that spawn more monsters, and they pack a punch.
Right.
And the other thing that I noticed that inspiring units do is that they usually drop their coin or their equipment on their fist whenever they get hit. They just get knocked back if they're inspired. So it's harder for them to lose their equipment. And they have an extra chance to destroy the greedlings that way, which
cool.
I noticed just at the end. So I was oh, this could have been so useful to notice before that. So yeah.
You got there anyway.
I got there anyway. The other thing is that you can unlock so much more stuff. I think I unlocked a couple of maps. No, one map for level 4 and one map for level 5. But you could still unlock a couple more things for your adventure, which I didn't, because I'm happy enough with the just the main story only. And I really don't want to do Island 5 again, not in a long while. I noticed this one was, I thought I completed this one, but I left it at Island 4. I guess Island 5 was that much of a bitch for me a couple of years ago when I first played it. So it took me just 2 years to finish this game. But I'm happy I did, because it was way too fun.
Yeah.
My only complaint is that the ship, once it starts moving, it is so slow. You could be just okay if it's really, really far from the other the side of the map where the port is, where the dock is. Sorry. You could be perfectly fine when you first build the chip, and you could be borderline losing the game once the chip gets to there.
Yeah, wow.
That's how long it takes. It takes in the last map, it took 6 or 7 in-game days to get to the dock. Which I understand you have to protect it, so the Gridlings will not. I don't know what happens if the Gridlings catch up to the chip. Do they just kill the villagers or what? I don't know. So I don't know what happens if they catch up to the chip, but it would be annoying if they reach the dog before you do. So
Especially if it's like after day 5 of waiting or something, and then they stuff it up. That would be
yeah,
annoying.
because once they always try to go, if they haven't grabbed a piece of equipment or a coin or the dog, they can grab the dog. Oh, by the way, you can rescue dogs in this game, and they will
Cool.
bark in the direction of the grid, like wherever the nearest portal is at, or whatever, like they're like starting to spawn.
That's cool.
That is very useful. But I didn't realize until the last night that the grid can carry the dog away. And that was so sad because I had like little dog, and then like two grid like had them like the paws, and like they carried it away into the portal. It was like, no. So yeah, that was sad.
Yeah.
Press F for respect, to pay respect. But yeah, that's Kingdom New Lands. I totally
Nice.
recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
I played a bit of Two Crowns in the past, not this week, in the past. And if you have a buddy to play with, go for that one. It has like more content in a way, but also that added difficulty that, like, in a way, having two people playing the game at the same time makes sense, because sometimes you have to run such a long distance between like one end of the city to the other.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like there isn't like enough time in the in-game day to do everything you have to do. So having a
Yeah.
buddy to help you with that is beautiful. And also you can have a steed that is a hippogriff, or like a griff. I think it was a griff. And
Nice.
that is absolutely cool.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Sounds good.
sorry, like I really love this game. Slow chip aside, I really love this game. So the other game that I beat, and you actually, before recording, you were saying you were kind of interested in this one, is Subsurface Circular.
I have also beat this a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested to see what you think, because it could go either way, I think.
Yeah, and the thing is that this game is very interesting, the way it approaches things, and how meta some of the things are, and I love it for it. Like, we
Nice.
probably have to do a spoiler cast of this at some point,
Mm-hmm.
because of how the world building is done, and also how they approach the topic. So in Surface Circular, and that is such a tongue twister.
Yeah.
You play as, well, I think you can name the detective, but in mine was Claire 1-1. I don't remember if it can recall anything else, because I started this like a long time ago.
Yeah,
But
I
let's
can't
call her
remember.
Claire for now. Or call them Claire. I don't know if robots have a gender, but fuck it. Thing with Claire is that they're a detective, and they're like confined to the subsurface, which is like the metro/train system in this society.
Mm-hmm.
A society where techs, which are robots, and like sentient robots with, well, various degrees of sentience,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
No, you're right.
consciousness, live alongside humans. They very much like taking every job a human can do, but anyway. You start investigating a case. The only way you can get information is by talking to the various texts that get into the subsurface. So it is a very interesting premise, and it is also, I call it like a more conventional but slightly unconventional visual novel, because it's not like you have like this line of dialogue that you always read. You can see, and it is like canon inside of the game that you can see like the backlog of the conversation,
Hmm.
because they kind of like telepathically or by message, I don't know. But also there are like decks that have headsets and they listen to music, and that's the soundtrack of the game. And that is so fucking cool. And there's all kinds of decks against various degrees of sentience and like, I guess, freedom on their actions, which made the game like so much richer, and the world like so much, it felt so much live in, because like not all decks were made the same way. And while you learn more about the world in general, you learn more about the case you're investigating, about this, that you were asked by a red tech, and then you are faced with a question. Yeah, a question.
Yep.
One thing that I've heard Alex and Rick like not like about the game is like one of the final puzzles, I'm gonna say, because sometimes you can't get all the information from one tech in one go. You have to talk to the other techs to get like that one prompt that you're able to ask to the other tech or say to the other tech. And then you get the information you want. And then you finish the chapter. Yeah. But which is very smart. Like, it feels like you're investigating, and it feels that sometimes it feels like you have to give to have the information that you want, which I love. And there was this one puzzle which I heard a lot of people get stuck in, which is kind of like trying to follow who is who in a conversation, and then you get asked questions about it. It took me like a couple of tries because I misread something or like misnoted something. But I do recommend using the trusty old pen and paper because I do agree that it is too much information to try to hold it all in your head. But if you use pen and paper, and if you are like methodical about it, I don't feel like you need to ask for help to the game, because the other thing that I heard and I didn't want to do is that you can turn on like a mode where you get help from the game to solve the riddle.
Yeah.
And I've heard that it gives up too much information.
Right.
So I avoided that at all costs, but I managed to solve it, and I feel actually pretty proud of it because it was actually really challenging.
Nice one.
So yeah, I do recommend it a lot. The beginning of the game can be a bit dense in the sense of you're given a lot of information and you have to learn about the world for you to solve the case. And there is a lot of information. I finished this in 3 sittings. But I regret nothing. It is a very good game. I got like a little bit of a void at the end. So very, very topical for today.
Well, and for anyone who doesn't know, this is a game by Mike Bithell, who's an indie developer who made the game Thomas Was Alone, which was quite famous back in the day. And I remember, if I might add, when he made Subsurface Circular, and there's a second one as well called Quarantine Circular, it was his kind of attempt to make a quote-unquote double-A game and go from being a solo indie developer to having a small team to make something that was high quality, but obviously within his scope. So it's not the biggest game, but everything is made really well. And like the graphics are very nice and everything's kind of slick and well made. And as Paula was saying, with the story and everything, there's a lot of depth to it that you have to kind of tease out as well. So it's not just this was around the time when a lot of indie games were just kind of like a gimmick and that's about it. And so I remember Mike Bithell being interviewed and being told, and him saying that this was kind of his attempt to kind of take indie games to another level in a way, and in a nice way. Like, not, he wasn't trying to be a dickhead or anything, but I think he kind of succeeded as well, because I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a very top quality game as well. So yeah,
One thing,
I agree.
I didn't know that quarantine secure was a thing. I have added it to my wish list, but I just realized it came out before the pandemic in 2018.
Yes.
And it's pretty much like it takes place in the middle of a world-ending pandemic. That didn't age well at all.
Well, the thing I think is most interesting about all of them, or both of them, I should say, is, like you say, in Subsurface, you're just sitting in a train carriage for the whole game, basically, talking to people. And same with Quarantine, you're kind of, I don't want to give away the story, but you're basically in one location again, talking to different people and finding out information in a very similar way, but it's a completely different story. But it shows how much world building you can put into just one kind of scene, and by introducing different characters and having interesting dialogue and, you know, putting it together really well, I think. So yeah, I would recommend this game as well for anyone who's listening.
Well, that has been added to my wish list. Wait for me to finish it whenever that happens. Why don't we talk about the games you've finished? I know one of them. The other one you talked to me about in on direct message on Discord. So
Yep.
I want to know more.
Cool. Well, first of all, I've finally got to a point with Vampire Survivors that I feel like I have completed it. I've talked about it in previous episodes of playing Vampire Survivors, and how there's basically just hundreds of things to unlock as you play, because it's a roguelike kind of game. Like, you play maximum like 30-minute sessions at a time, and then your dude dies and you go back to the menu. But during those sessions and afterwards, when you unlock things, you can unlock new levels and characters to play and that kind of thing. And if anyone's not aware, it's basically one of those games that has been copied heaps since either it came out, or I think there might have possibly been something before it in the same genre, but ultimately this has been copied a lot since it came out because it was very successful and did really well. And now you've got lots and lots of games where you have a character in the center of the screen and they auto attack anything that comes at them, and you can basically move, and that's about it. So you've got enemies coming at you all the time from every side, every angle. But as you kill them, you gain experience, and as you level up, you gain new weapons, and you upgrade your existing weapons, and so on and so forth. And so by the time you're at the end of your run, when you've upgraded everything and, you know, added new weapons, that sort of stuff, you are virtually unkillable by hordes and hordes and hordes of enemies attacking you. And you can literally have hundreds and thousands of enemies attacking you all at once. In fact, one of the unlock requirements was to, I think, kill over 100,000 enemies in a single level using a particular character. And if you did that, you unlocked something else. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on, is unlocking things. Because I think the game has something like 180 achievements on Steam. And each one of them is basically an unlock or it's tied to a progression marker in the game. So while I didn't get all of them, because I think I missed about 30 achievements or 30 unlocks, those ones were all for DLC related stuff, which I don't have. So I'm kind of annoyed that they included all the DLC stuff in the total, because otherwise I would have like 100%ed it. But having said that, I did manage to unlock everything else, so I was very proud of myself. And there's even some things that I had to Google because, you know, you have to do this stage with this character and then at this particular time you have to go to this position to fight this particular enemy, and then that unlocks something.
Oh my god.
So there's a bit of that stuff which is like no one's ever going to figure this out on their own. So thank you, Google, for that. But I appreciate that most of it wasn't that kind of stuff. Like most of it could be figured out on your own. Because I hate games where you have to basically have a wiki open the whole time you're playing it just to understand what's going on. So it wasn't that, which is nice. But again, like I said last time, it's a whole lot of game for what ends up being like a few bucks to buy. I can't remember exactly how much time I spent in it. I'm going to have a quick look now.
I do remember hearing about Vampire Survivors like for the first time September of last year. Because it was picked as the game of the month on one of my friend groups.
Ah, cool.
No, not that one. It was like a Survivors like game was picked, and they actually showed the original one the idea was based on. So the game is Holocure, and it's a whole life fun game based on Vampire Survivors.
I got a lot of fun out of this one, so I'd definitely be keen on checking out some of the clones and others that have been inspired by it, kind of thing, because it's actually a fun, I guess, a fun premise system to kind of play with. Kind of like how auto battlers got popular, and now there's like some really cool ideas that are coming out for the way people are building auto battlers and stuff. But yeah, I ended up spending 37 hours.
Wow.
In Vampire Survivors to unlock everything, and there was still more I could have done, but I just kind of went, I've finished, I've done enough.
That's like 74 waves or like half an hour sections.
And sometimes even more than that, because a couple of the unlock requirements are like survive as this character for 15 minutes. So if you're just doing the unlocks, you survive for 15 minutes and just quit the level and move on to the next thing. But a lot of that time as well was just stuffing around, not really knowing what I'm doing at the beginning. I probably spent at least the first 10 hours just having fun and not really trying to accomplish anything, just going through levels and, exploring the game organically. But yeah, for a game that when it's on sale, it's like literally a few dollars and you can get more time than I got out of it. So, and every minute I played was enjoyable. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend that one. Definitely one to look out for if you enjoy that kind of thing, because it's a very good game. There's a lot of depth to it. There's loads of weapons to unlock and synergies between attacks and stuff to unlock. And there's like, I want to say there's about 40 different characters you can unlock to play as, just heaps. And there's probably like 20 odd different levels to unlock, and then variations of those levels, and so on. So there's heaps of stuff in it. So yeah, it's a good value game and one I definitely recommend. Speaking of value games, I asked Paula earlier when I was playing this game if she'd heard of Zachtronics, the developer, and I don't think you had, really? You weren't too familiar with them?
I haven't heard of them at all.
Cool. Okay, that's kind of fun because I played a game called Last Call BBS, which has been billed as the final Zachtronics game, as in the last one he's going to make. So there's this indie developer called Zachtronics who's kind of known for making incredibly niche programming-related puzzle games. One of his first games was a kind of chemistry game where to solve puzzles you had to make bonds between different elements and right down to like atomic levels and nucleuses and all this kind of stuff. But it's all fairly accurate, I think, scientifically. Like, it's not fictitious. It's actually pretty realistic. There's another game he made, which I haven't played that one, but there's another one I played called Shenzhen IO, which is the whole game is building circuit boards basically to get certain end results that you're assigned. You basically play as a remote worker for an electronics company, and it's your job to design the circuit boards that go into their products to then, in the fictitious world, to sell. But the actual circuit boards you're designing are kind of real, and if you had all those components, you could actually make it and it would work the same way that it does in the game. So that not only makes it challenging because I'm not a electrician, it means it's also very satisfying when you do it because you feel like you might have actually learned something or just been exposed to something more realistic. So yeah, that's the kind of games he makes. And most of them kind of have some sort of interface which puts you in like a realistic position, like you're playing a character who is sitting at a computer with a keyboard doing the things that you are doing in the game. So there's that kind of one-to-one reality thing, like hacking games and that sort of stuff, how they kind of try and make it realistic and that kind of thing. So Last Call BBS is kind of a retro throwback game because I don't know if you youngins remember, but in the early days of the internet, there were these things called BBSs, which were bulletin board systems. And before we had web pages and things, we had news groups and bulletin boards, which were basically like forums. And people would post things to certain bulletin boards and you'd subscribe to them like you would an RSS feed or that kind of thing. So this is kind of like almost, I feel like if this actually, I don't know if it's real, but if it actually is his last game, this is kind of like his love letter to growing up and being a developer in like the 90s and early 2000s and like those earlier stages of the internet. Because essentially you log onto a computer and it's an old school kind of style desktop, but it's a custom thing. It doesn't exist. And you log onto a BBS, like a bulletin board system. And one of the things that used to happen on these bulletin boards was people could share things with each other. So if I subscribe to the How Long to Beat bulletin board, maybe I would see what people post on there, and people might post their times because this is before you'd have a full database to search and all that kind of thing. So people would probably say, hey, I played this game and it took me this long. And that would be something they'd share. So then someone else could look it up and go, oh, cool. That's how long it takes to play that game. So it's kind of a primitive version of what we have now. But the other thing that you could do is share programs and files and games and that kind of thing. So this game is kind of like a bulletin board where, quote unquote, different developers, fictitious ones obviously, have shared games on this bulletin board that you then have access to by loading up the game. And it ends up there's about 8 different games within the game that you can play, is what I'm getting at. So, and as you play them, there's like a little notes app as well, which kind of comes up and tells you lore. It's like he's actually talking to you saying, hey, yeah, back in the day, I met this guy who made a game and he's from Japan and we didn't know anyone from Japan and that was fun. So we played this weird version of Solitaire that he'd written and we kind of shared it around on our bulletin board and it got popular in the US. And, you know, he kind of gives you a bit of background history, which I don't know if it's authentic and referring to actual things, but it kind of feels like it might be. So that's kind of like the setup for the whole game. The game itself is essentially like 8 games in one. And so one of the first ones you unlock is, I forget what it's called. They've all got their own names. But it's basically a puzzle game where you've got a grid and it's a bit like Picross in a way, where you've got numbers around the grid on 2 sides, and that tells you how many squares on that column or row are to get filled in. But then on the grid, there's also enemies. And so there's different rules. Like every enemy has to only have 1 free square around them. So they have to have 3 of their 4 walls kind of closed in. And the idea is it's making a dungeon once you put all these squares in the grid and you fill in the grid. So there's other rules like, you know, corridors can only be 1 square wide. So if there's a gap, you kind of need to put a grid piece in the middle to kind of keep it to that rule. If there's a treasure chest, that has to be in a 3x3 room of empty squares. So, you know, with all these different rules and stuff, you end up solving the puzzle and putting in walls. And once you've finished it, it finishes a different dungeon. And there's like, I want to say like 12 to 20 of these to solve of increasing difficulty. Then there's another game, which is a futuristic, it's set in the future. It's like robots have decided that we want to make authentic 20th century food. So we're going to make production lines to make them rather than using synthetic food that they use in the future. So your job is to set up these production lines, and your whole purpose is basically you've got on half the screen, you've got a bunch of machines and conveyor belts and things. So you kind of set up where they go. So if it was a hamburger, you might start with a bun coming out of the bun distributor, but then you've got to put it through a slicer to cut it in half, and you've got to send it down the conveyor belt, but to a final machine where it's going to hold it. And while another machine spits out like a meat patty and then puts it on a cooker that you say has to cook it for a certain amount of time for it to be cooked. And then that spits it out onto the conveyor belt again, and the stacker kind of stacks it on top of the bun, and so on and so forth for the rest of the hamburger, and then it spits it out the other end complete. So you set up all these machines, but then on the other side of the screen, you've basically got the back of all the machines, and you've got to wire them up to create logic sequences and stuff. So you might have a machine that spits out tomato sauce for the top of the bun or whatever, the burger. So you need to put in the wiring that basically after the burger's been built to a certain point, a signal will get sent to that machine to say, hey, spit out some tomato sauce. And then once it's done that, the signal will get sent back to the one that's got the top of the bun to put it back on or whatever. And it gets quite complex because you end up having different interim kind of logic gates and stuff, where you might have matrices that will trigger lots of things all at once, or you might have ones with like counters, so it might hold the first 20 that it gets, but then it'll spit out the third one after that, and it gets really complex, and you really have to start note and paper, kind of like pen and paper, taking notes to keep track of what you're doing, because it gets really, really complex. And it's all fairly logical because it's like, it's electronics. It's like A goes to B goes to C kind of thing. But depending on the complexity of what you're doing, it builds up, and you're basically, again, creating circuits and making things happen. And that's one game. There's another couple of simple games. Like there's a version of Solitaire which isn't quite Solitaire. It's a Japanese version that I think exists but is slightly different. That one you can't really finish. It's just a Solitaire game. You can just keep playing it. There's also a Gundam building app where you get like those construction sets where you get the plastic pieces that you have to cut off the frame and then put them together and paint them and put it all together to make different robots and stuff. And there's like 6 robots or something that you can build in the software. And that's just kind of funny as well. Like there's no real right or wrong to it. It's just, you can do it. And so on and so forth. There are other versions as well of the same sort of thing, but one of the most fun ones is this. Again, it's like another kind of logic programming thing, but it's using, you're basically building organs and flesh things. So you start off with like a drop of blood, and then you say, okay, so for every drop of blood, I want to fill in the square on the right side of it, so that now we've got 2 drops of blood. But that might go all the way across the screen. So then you go, okay, so for every drop of blood, I want to also fill in the one below it. So then that'll do everyone below it. But then you think, okay, every drop of blood that's on the outside of this shape, I want to turn into bone. So those then turn into bone, but then you've got blood in the middle of the bones. Or you can turn it into different versions of meat or flesh or fat. Or you can make it hairy. You can put eyes on things. It's really kind of gross because it ends up being a bit of a like a monstrous kind of Cronenberg thing where you're basically making these weird shapes and distorted kind of looking organisms out of this stem cell basically. And but again, it's a very logical thing. Like you've got a progression down the bottom that you fill in, telling you basically all the instructions for what has to happen. And then on the screen, it shows you like each stage until you reach the final product, which is basically you've got a picture of what you're aiming for and you try and match it. And then once you've matched it, you've solved the puzzle. So without going into too much further detail, hopefully that kind of explains just how complex it can be, because it really can be. And some of these are like super head scratches. And yeah, I'm kind of happy I figured out the vast majority of puzzles in this game on my own. But having said that, I did kind of look up a guide for a couple of the ones that just I had no idea, and I was like banging my head against the wall constantly trying to figure it out. So yeah, it's a very hardcore niche kind of game, I would say. Not everyone is going to enjoy it because, like other Zachtronics games, you kind of have to do some real kind of maths and some real logic and actually design circuits and production lines and that kind of thing. So it's very satisfying because of the depth and the way it's put together, but it's also very, very niche and difficult. So your mileage may vary. But yeah, I finished it and I was very happy about that.
I might want to wait for a sale on this one since it is like, you may like it or you may not.
Yeah, well, it is the kind of game that I would say look up on YouTube or something and find out more about before diving in, or any Zachtronics games actually, because there's no story, there's no spoiler to be had, anything like that. It's just if you see a few levels, you'll know what you're in for. And if that looks appealing, then cool, but you'll know pretty quickly if you're into it or not. And the other one I'd recommend from him is Shenzhen IO, which, as I said, is the circuit board game, basically. And yeah, that's got so much you can do in that game, and it gets really, really in-depth and difficult. So, you can definitely spend a lot of hours on that. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers that. One of the reasons I finished it, though, was because it was leaving Game Pass.
Wait, it wasn't Game Pass? God damn it.
Seems to be a common thread at the moment. I think it'll be gone by the time this episode comes out, but it might still be there if you wanted to try it, Paula. But I don't know. But I'll go straight into my retired because that I'll be quick with. And it was also on Game Pass and is leaving Game Pass, which is why I fired it up. But I didn't end up finishing it because, well, I'll explain why. But it's a game called Moonscars, which I guess the easiest way to explain it is if you know Blasphemous and or have played the game Blasphemous, it's like Blasphemous. To the extent that it's a 2D kind of platforming action game. It's, super difficult, like challenging and unforgiving. It's got beautiful pixel art and animations and stuff, much like Blasphemous, where your moves and everything, like the animations are kind of the highlight for me of a game like this. But there's a really complex universe and lore going on with this game that I really enjoyed learning about, but I don't know. I retired Blasphemous as well, and I just kind of, it's not really my kind of game, I suppose. But it's definitely quality, and there are some kind of Souls-like relationships to be had. It's definitely pulls on a lot of that stuff where, you die and there's a corpse run back to your body and all that kind of thing. But they do a lot in world with this game that kind of explains all of that and gives proper reasoning behind why that stuff happens, and why when you die you lose part of yourself ultimately. So I would definitely recommend people check it out if they play Blasphemous and liked it, because Moonscars is very much in that same vein, but different enough to be unique and be its own thing and not feel like a copy. So yeah, I didn't finish it, but I tried it because it was leaving Game Pass, and I'm glad I did because, it's a good game. It's just not my kind of thing. But yeah, that's me done for now. I pass it on to Paula.
I retired Stranded Deep, which, by the way, is a game that I tried on my sister's PS5 the other day when I visit my nephew. And the thing is that we were looking for something to play together. And, well, I was looking for stuff. He saw, like, the thumbnail on the PS Plus catalog that kind of called to him because there was, like, a shark on it, and it was, like just pure blue sea, sky, and a shark. And he was like, hey, I want to play that. So we downloaded it. And it is a survival game where you are stranded into an island because I don't know where you are. Like, it's just an island in the middle of nowhere that you crash into after the plane fell from the sky. And it is a first-person game. I have no idea how I did not puke from the experience because I usually can't stand first-person games because of maybe it was because the sections that I played were the ones that we needed like to collect materials and stuff so I could take my time and not move the camera like a crazy woman.
Yep.
It doesn't have head bobbing now that I think about it, so that helped quite a lot. That tangent aside, we managed to survive 3 days. The thing about it is that when he had the controller, he stepped. We were passing the controller since it is a first-person game. So whenever it was something he didn't like or didn't quite understand how to do, he passed the controller to me. When it was time for exploring an adventure, I passed the controller on to him. The thing is that he didn't quite realize that the very brightly colored and the spiky sister was poisonous or venomous. I have no idea which one it is.
One of them.
One of them. And so we got poisoned, and a little while ago he actually dropped the only herbs in the island that were helpful for an antidote. So we just tried to get some herbs and didn't survive because I think we got poisoned like on day 1. And it was like, okay, I guess we'll find something, and it didn't matter where we tried, we couldn't get rid of the poison, so we just watched as the health of the character slowly faded away. We also died on other means, like he was exploring and was like, hey, you might want to drink water before going into the sea. Because he was trying to swim to another island in search of stuff and maybe something for an antidote. We got bit by a shark and didn't quite die right there. We swam a little bit more. The cause of death was a mixture of bleeding, poison, and dehydration, so that was fun. In the end, we dropped the playthrough once we realized there was no way in hell we could survive past day 3 without an antidote. We attempted another run, but it was quite fun to go through the tutorial, so we started another run and deactivated the tutorial. And then we kind of like got for and did something else. The thing that I realized after that, like when I got home, is that he still wanted to play the game, but by himself and with a guide. So I guess I'm out of the picture for playing Stranded Deep, but he is still on his playthrough. Like yesterday, he called me and like via WhatsApp, and he pointed the camera at the game and was playing that way. So I got to see his misadventures. Because, there were misadventures. And at the end of the day, he was like, you know what? Not in these words, but yeah, definitely the intent was to say, fuck this game.
Yep.
That still was pretty fun while it lasted. I don't know if he'll keep on playing on the next weekend. The release for me, this game is very 6 feet under, very deep. But
yeah, I've actually retired this one a long time ago as well, and just after I knew you'd retired it, I looked it up on Howland's Beat, and I noticed Everdread has retired it too, and his comment kind of sums up my idea as well. His comment is literally just pretty generic.
It is pretty generic. Like, if I had to recommend a survival game in the sea, in the ocean, I would rather play Subnautica.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, this one is kind of generic. A little bit clunky too, like when you're trying to pick up stuff. It is harmless fun, so it is okay. It is fine TM.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah,
Cool.
do I roll into the playing?
Yeah, go on. Please do.
Okay, from the thing we stopped playing to the thing we're still playing. I'm still playing Café Enchanté. I went through a little bit more of it this morning because I was entertained by other things during, like Kingdom, during the weekend. But as I said in Café Enchanté, everything went to shit real quick. Now we're on a rescue mission. We learned a little bit more about the nature of angels and the heavenly world KLM. As I said, this is a cafe where the different like misfits from each individual world happen to be able to visit via a door, which, by the way, no explanation why there's a door to the other worlds in this cafe, and why did a cafe god built upon this sword. Like, I feel like there are like lore implications that hasn't quite been explored. Like, they're implicit, I guess. But I wish to know more, and they haven't announced a fan disc or a sequel to this game, which I'm quite sad about. But that's neither here nor there. The thing about the world Kalem is that it is only inhabited by angels and fallen angels. Nothing else, nothing more. And usually since anything that introduces change into the world gets eliminated pretty quickly. So what happens is that sometimes angels become fallen, like they develop emotions. And since they develop emotions, they are a liability to this world. So an entity known as God sends judgment, which is a specific angel like its right hand, to destroy anything that causes the world to become imbalanced. So in a way, it is quite interesting how they tackle angels in this lore, because they're kind of like terminals and God is like a server.
Right.
So they're there to, I guess, talk about the word of God, and they very much do anything that God wants them to do. They're like the emissaries and shit like that. And
Yeah.
the other interesting thing is that it takes the more, I'm gonna call it the Shin Megami Tensei way of representing God and angels, as they're more, I'm gonna say mechanical or fabricated beings. Which is very interesting because I swear, just by the music itself, you would think this game is an RPG, but it isn't. Just by the themes itself, you would think it's an RPG, but it isn't. Like, you got everything for it to be an RPG. You're just missing like proper turn-based battles. So yeah, that's where I'm at the story. I think I haven't recommended the soundtrack of the game enough, because you have the true spectrums of it. You have very chill, almost lofi music that is like the cafe music that they play during the more calm parts of the story. And then you have the more upbeat and almost heroic themes that are played during battles and adventures time and stuff like that. So I do recommend, maybe I'll grab a link later and put it in the agenda. But there is a video on YouTube that has like the entire soundtrack, and it is so good. I love it.
Nice. Yeah. If you do that, we'll definitely include it on the where we can in the description.
Yeah, I'm definitely
For people
grabbing
to
it.
check out.
Also, the there's always like in these Otome games like a completion CG, that is an image that you get just from completing the game like 100%, getting all the endings, all that jazz. And it screams Persona 5 because of the graphical style of it. Like it, I'm gonna just send it to you. Here is the link. And if you go to the video, you see the image and it's like, yeah, that's Persona 5.
It definitely has that vibe.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's enough of me catching about Café Enchanté. I should probably try to finish this game for next week, but I make no promises. The other game that I've been playing is The Wandering Village, and this is one I think you were quite interested in.
Yes, it's on my wish list already.
So in The Wandering Village, it is a city builder.
Sorry? I just got to say, sorry for the random music I've just been subjecting everyone to. I was looking at that video in the background and forgot that it would record the music as well. Oh. So, never mind. We shall continue. But I've closed it now, so there won't be any more of that.
I forgot that you were like recording the general audio and not just like Discord. Yeah. Beautiful. So...
That's all right. So The Wandering Village.
So it is kind of like I'm gonna say apocalyptic game in a way, because the ground has and the air have grown to quite a level of toxicity where humans are kind of forced to live either like in the few places that this toxicity haven't like gone into, or some of them, like the ones that you're the little village that you're controlling, have made a little place for them on the back of this lizard-like thing that we call an ombu.
Cool.
And the goal of the game is to survive as long as possible in the back of the ombu. And that's about it. There are many ways to die. Like, I played the demo of the game and I died because I think what happened is that I went through like a place with high toxicity and a lot of spores, and the whole place became contaminated. And I didn't have a doctor at that time, and the toxicity on the ombu was way too high, and the ombu died. So there are various things that you can do to survive. First of all, you need water, and the only way to get it is with there are two ways to get it, but the main way to get it is via like air harvesters. I don't remember the name of them, but they harvest the humidity in the ambient. You have basic resources on top of the ombu, like stone, wood, and berries. But if you want to survive long enough, you have to start, first of all, farming, because the berries are quite limited, in my opinion. And also, you are able to go into expeditions. So once you're running low on materials, and while you wait for them to regenerate, you can go into expeditions and get like bundles of wood, planks, even like materials that you can't get in the ombu, like iron and research points that you need for you to go progress the research on certain topics on the ombu. So you have a lot of research branches for resources, for buildings, for the ombu itself. And it becomes like this kind of symbiotic relationship between the village and the ombu, because you have to research manage your village for them to survive. But there are times where the ombu needs a little bit of help. So if you're going through a desert, the ombu needs to eat. And sometimes there won't be food for the ombu for days on end. So you have to harvest things on top of the ombu to make food for the ombu. and then use a trebuchet to feed the ombu.
Cool.
You also have to care for your villagers, because if the ombu goes, you have to earn the trust of the ombu for it to listen to you. So for example, you can
Hmm.
decide like where, if there's like a fork in the road, you can decide like which way the ombu will walk into. But also you are able to give it commands. But it will only start listening to you once you are under trust. Um,
Cool.
so for example, in another situation, like if you are at the sea, you want to, and the ombu can't sleep on water, it has to be on an island. So you have to energy manage the ombu itself for the village to survive. And again, if the ombu walks into a dangerous place for the people, you have to have the resources to decontaminate the ombu and save your village. So besides um, the usual things that you have to manage during the resource management games, like water or like food or entertainment, not, but you have to make the village like look a little bit prettier if you want the people to work at their maximum capacity. You also have to manage like who is in which building, so everyone has their roles. But you also have to manage the ombu itself, and you have to take care of things like toxicity, and you may have people who get sick because of the toxicity. And also the only way to get more people onto the ombu is by walking into these little wandering groups that are like in the map. So you have to be careful on where you send expeditions to. When you send on an
Hmm.
expedition, you sometimes have to make decisions. And if you make a poor decision, you may lose someone. And that is a very bad thing if you're in the early game, because every little villager counts, especially in the early game.
Yeah.
Like I have all my buildings, some of them at minimum capacity to have them all working. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that's the Wandering Village. The other thing that I want to say is that the art is pretty cute. And also
It
it
looks really
amazes
cool.
me
Yeah.
how you can zoom out like really, really far and then zoom in all the way and it still looks good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what struck at me about it in the first place, and why it's on my wish list. It's just it looks really
Yeah,
cool.
I think it is on Game Pass, so I would recommend you to give it a try. Like, it is a very good game. I still like Timberborn better. Um,
Yep.
and what I think is that the Wandering Village is a bit more chill in a way. Like, so even though
Okay.
there's a lot of things to manage, it takes a while for things to get rough. Especially if you're, maybe it was
Yep.
because I was playing the tutorial level. So yeah, if you want more of a
Yep.
challenge, and there are like 3 other difficulties that are easy, mid, and very hard. But I do recommend
Cool.
it a lot. At least give it a try. So yeah, what have you been playing?
Well, I've been first one I've been playing for a while, just on and off, is Disney
Mm-hmm.
Dreamlight Valley, which is still kind of in early access, even though it's pretty much good to go. They just do big updates every month. So I've probably played about 160 or something hours of this so far over time, because I've been playing it for a while, and they have been updating it as I've been playing with new content and that all the time. So there's new stuff to do all the time. For anyone who doesn't know, it's basically a cross between Animal Crossing and Disney and that kind of thing. So you essentially have a place called
Mm-hmm.
Dreamlight Valley, where when you start, there's a few characters like Goofy and Mickey and what's his name, Donald Duck and Scrooge McDuck and all that kind of thing. Some of the classics, of Disney. And the theme of the game is that everyone has forgotten why they are there and who they are and who they're friends with and all that kind of thing, because there's this evil force that's present called the Forgetting. Um, and you as the player are not affected by it, and you can go around and clean up all the thorns and nasty things that have formed from the Forgetting in order to alleviate it on the characters who live
Not
there.
gonna lie, the names of the things kind of like reminds me of Kingdom Hearts, and I haven't like war flashbacks even though I haven't played it.
There's probably bits of that there too, but I have never played a Kingdom Hearts, so I don't know. But the gameplay wise, it's very much more like what do I say, Animal Crossing in a way, because there's no like action or fighting or anything. Like you help out your village or your valley neighbors by either building things for them or making food that you give them as gifts, or farming vegetables and things that you can then either sell or give them as gifts. Or like Scrooge McDuck has a shop where you can buy new clothes and furniture and stuff for your house or for their house or for anyone's house. Remy from Ratatouille, the rat, has a restaurant where you can make meals and things for people. And there's a whole lot of stuff to do basically, and all of it contributes to basically your ability to craft new things for yourself and for others, and to basically make friends with other people in the valley. And as you play, you unlock more and more characters to add to the valley, and you like put their house somewhere and build it for them, and then they'll come live there as well. And yeah, there's heaps of different ones. There's a couple of characters from Moana. There's like Buzz Lightyear and Woody from Toy Story. There's Wall-E. There's a few people from Frozen. Most recently was added a couple from Beauty and the Beast, so there's like Beauty and the Beast as characters. There's Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. There's others that I can't remember, but there's a whole lot of different characters that eventually make it to your valley and kind of settle down and start living there. And as they do, you then become friends with them, and basically you've got a friendship level that you level up by spending time with them or talking to them or giving them presents and that kind of stuff, or doing quests for them. And once they hit level 10, then you're like best mates, and that's the goal kind of thing. So it's just very much a kind of a game without any real ending at the moment, because they do keep adding to it every month. The goal at the moment is basically unlocking as many different clothes or furniture or whatever else you can collect for your own little house. But I'm not really into that kind of stuff, so I've like upgraded my house, so I've got like 30 rooms on 20 different floors or something, but they're all completely empty except for the very first one you go into when you go in the front door, and that's where everything is. Because that's where like my crafting table is, so I can craft stuff. That's where my oven is, so I can cook food. That's where all my chests are, so I can store seeds to be planted or food to go into cooking or like other resources. So there's essentially a whole lot of activities you can do. You can go around mining for gems. You can just gather different fruit and veg and that kind of thing that are just growing wild. You can farm, so you can get into a bit of Harvest Moon if you like, and basically make farms and plant crops and water them and tend to them and then pick them and sell them and eat them, everything you can do. You can go fishing, and there's a whole range of fish and other things to catch. You can, there's in each different area, because there's a different whole bunch of different biomes essentially on the map. In each area there are different critters, like animals that live there, so you can make friends with them. So like in the very, very starting one, there's a bunch of squirrels just running around, but if you go up to them and feed them some peanuts, they'll like you, and the more you do that, they'll eventually like you enough that you can have them as a pet, and they'll follow you around if you want. And there's other animals in different biomes that have different requirements and different behaviors and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's the kind of game that's like fun to dip into every now and then and see what's new and, do the quests and then put it down for a while until there's another update. So not to give too much away, but as an example, like very light spoilers here, but the latest update they added Beauty and the Beast. So Beauty and the Beast as a character, and you've got this big castle on the map, and when you go into the castle there's a whole heap of doors, and each door leads to a different world. So there's the Lion King world, so you go there and you meet Simba and Scar and the other one, the lions basically. And you make friends with them, and then they come back to your valley and they live in your valley. Or there's like the Toy Story world, where you go to the Toy Story world and you meet Woody and that, and you make friends with them, and then they come back and live in your valley. So the way they do updates is basically every time they add a new IP, I suppose, like a new world, one of these doors unlocks, and you go through, and like in this one, you go through and you end up in the castle from Beauty and the Beast, and you talk to Belle, who's worried about the Beast because he's locked himself away because he's having a bad time and he's depressed and stuff. So your first quest is kind of to figure out what's going on and go cheer him up and make the Beast happy, which you do, and eventually they come back and live in your valley with everyone else. But then there are more quests. So like the Beast kind of moves to the valley, and it's kind of sweet in a way, some of the writing, because the Beast kind of feels like an outsider because he's a beast and he is feeling really self-conscious. So your quest is to kind of help him make friends. And so, he follows you.
It's really kind of cute.
Yeah, it's really kind of nice in a way. Like it's got some good messages and that sort of thing. It's not just stupid and pointless. It's actually got some good writing going on. And so you take the Beast around to meet a few of your fellow villagers, and he has like some awkward conversations with them, and you kind of encourage him and tell him what he did right and what he could do better and that kind of thing, and things that he could do to make friends and kind of find common ground and that kind of thing. And you eventually help him make friends and feel more at home in his new home. And that's kind of a big quest line for him. But it's obviously not, you're not going out and fighting things or destroying things or what. It's very wholesome and Disney. But it's very feel good too. Like it actually is nice to kind of just make friends as a quest, like, because you don't see that in many games. But yeah, so I've been playing a bit more of that lately because I haven't played it for probably at least a month, if not more. And there's been a couple of updates since I have played last. So there's the Beauty and the Beast update, but there's also another one where there's a character from Wreck-It Ralph who I kind of half remember from the movie, but it's a girl who races on the like candy racetrack thing.
It is the tiny one with the black hair and the ponytail?
And yeah, I think so.
I don't know her name.
I forget her name.
I haven't watched the movie. I just know she's from Candyland.
So her thing when she shows up is that she's all glitchy and keeps phasing in and out of reality, kind of like a glitchy computer screen. And so again, it's kind of a sweet, nice, cute quest line for her as well, because you're trying to basically make her world synergize with your world and everything get along and fit. So you've got to kind of do stuff in your valley to make it a little bit more appealing for her, so that she's not so glitchy and she kind of settles down a bit and is happy to move in and make friends and that kind of stuff. So, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on, which I think is really cool. I'm a big fan of that kind of wholesome game story rather than everything being conflict all the time. It's nice to work with emotions a bit and that kind of thing. And especially like one of the very first quests you do is Mickey Mouse is in the village, but Minnie Mouse isn't there. And Minnie Mouse isn't there because she's forgotten who she is and that she's in love with Mickey. And so she appears though every now and then as like almost like a ghost. So like she's there, but because she's forgotten, no one can see her and no one knows that she's there. And so she's ignored all the time, and she's feeling really depressed and lonely. And you basically go along a quest line to make everyone else remember her, so that she then is back in the village because they start interacting with her again, and she then manifests into reality because everyone remembers who she is and loves her and looks after her and that kind of stuff. So I don't know, those sorts of highly emotional stories are kind of fun to play
Yep.
as something different. So it's a good game for that sort of thing. Well, before I go on to my highlight of the week, I have been playing more Baldur's Gate 3, which I can get through really quickly because I've been playing it every week. But there was a big update which came out, which did one thing that I'm very, very grateful for, to the point I feel like they've been listening to me personally. Because they included now an option which you can switch on in the options to automatically eavesdrop on conversations.
Ooh.
So playing in co-op, if one of my party members goes off and starts talking to someone, no matter what I'm doing, it just automatically puts me into that conversation so I can hear what's happening and listen to what's going on. So I don't have to rely on my mates to tell me and go, I'm about to have a conversation. It just automatically does it now, and you never miss anything.
That's so nice.
Ever, which is great. And yeah. But we're still continuing with that, and we're like 50 hours played already.
Oh my god.
And I thought that we were kind of close to, or I thought that we'd finished Act 1, or that we'd at least been close to it. But then I found out there's a trophy that pops when you do finish Act 1, and I don't have that trophy.
Ta-da.
So, so we haven't got there yet. For anyone who's playing the game and knows what I'm about to say, now we're up to the part where we're in the Underdark, and we're basically doing all the quests there. We just did some stuff at a forge, and it was very difficult, and we all died at least once during the fight. So yeah, that's what we're up to. But that's Baldur's Gate. It's still good. It's still complex. There's so much to do. I mean, we're 50 hours in. We are kind of going slow because we're trying to do everything and anything that we can do. And obviously with 3 people in co-op, it's probably a bit slower than if you're playing on your own. But it's still good, and we're still having fun, so we're still regularly playing that. But now, the big one that I could probably talk for way too long about, but I've already talked too long, is I've been playing Lies of P, which, my God, I am loving every minute of. It's so good. It's everything I wanted it to be and more. Again, day 1 release on Game Pass, so woot to that. Lies of P is a Dark Souls clone or inspired game. I tend to say clone more than inspired because it's way more like Dark Souls than any other Dark Souls
yep.
I've played. Basically, all the mechanics are exactly Dark Souls, with a bit of flavor here and there, but the world and the design and everything is way more Bloodborne. And the combat actually shares a bit more with Bloodborne because it's a bit more fast action than methodical slow. But if you've played Dark Souls and or Bloodborne, you know exactly what it's going to feel like to play. I'm playing more of a kind of dex build where I'm using like a rapier as my weapon. So I'm more of like a fencing kind of dude, which I chose specifically because I normally go big sword, big shield in just about everything. So I thought, no, I'll do a more finesse kind of thing, and I'll use a little pokey sword and move around a lot and that kind of thing. And I'm having so much fun with it. But the actual game itself is really interesting. So the setting is it's loosely based on Pinocchio, hence Lies of P, and you play a quote-unquote puppet who no one's actually called me Pinocchio yet, but you're Pinocchio. But you look like a real
human.
Yeah, like a real boy with a robotic arm. But the rest of you actually looks human and like fleshy and all that kind of thing. Because most of the enemies, if not all of them, are actually robots or puppets. They're called puppets, but they're more like automatons from, say, I don't know if anyone's played the game Siberia, but the automatons in that kind of remind me of the automatons in Lies of P, where they're very kind of steampunk style robots, and they kind of move that way, and they kind of have that blank kind of look on their face because they don't, obviously they don't move their face. But essentially, you're in a city called Krat, where all the puppets and everything have gone mental and have killed everybody. That's the setup.
Wow.
And you are playing yeah. So there's, instead of souls, there's this thing called ergo, which you gather from killing enemies and you use to level up and all that kind of stuff. And the lore kind of thing is that ergo is the substance that powers the puppets, but they think, I don't know because I haven't finished the game yet, but they think like that's what's corrupted them as well. So they've all kind of gone mental, and as you travel through the city and play the game, there's dead bodies like everywhere. Like humans have been killed. And there are...
It would be interesting since it is the thing that has been corrupting puppets and you think you're a puppet and you're collecting it right now. It would be very interesting if something happens from that.
Well, this may come into it later on in the game. Because I'll get back to that. I'll circle back in a second. But essentially, all the puppets that you meet as well are kind of like how in Subsurface Circular all the robots are doing human jobs and stuff. Most of the puppets you meet are kind of doing service positions or jobs, and you can tell by the way they look. Like the first guy you meet is obviously a policeman, and because he's dressed like in a police outfit and he's holding a stop sign. Because but then there are dudes who look like butlers. There's other automatons that look like maids or housekeepers. There are entertainers and like jugglers and circus folk and that kind of thing who are puppets as well. But there are also lots of humans that you meet along the way as NPCs and that kind of thing. So not all humans are dead, but as you go through the streets, there's lots of dead bodies and stuff all over the place. And the puppets that you meet are all mental. But you very quickly make it to a hotel, which becomes the hub of the game, kind of like Firelink Shrine in a Dark Souls, or the Hunter's Dream in Bloodborne, or that kind of thing. And there are a number of NPCs there who you gather throughout the game as well. So they kind of more NPCs come as you meet them in later levels and that sort of stuff. And there's a lady there who is a human who is the one you level up with and all that kind of stuff. So it's very, very Souls-like in that sense. There's the lady who will upgrade your weapons. There's later on you find a dude who will upgrade your robot arm, because that's kind of like your second weapon. So it's more like Bloodborne in the fact that there's no outright shields or anything. Most of your weapons are just some form of a sword or an axe or a club. And your robot arm kind of acts as your shield / secondary weapon, because you can do things to it so that it like turns into a flamethrower, or it can have like a grappling hook that you shoot at people to bring them closer to you, or there is actually a mod where you can turn it into basically a shield. But most of the time you're doing very offensive kind of fighting like Bloodborne, and the key is to parry attacks instead of block them. So you can block with your sword, like you just put your sword up and block. But if you time it right, you do a parry and it kind of staggers your enemy and you can get in for the kill kind of thing. But the real fun is the lore and the universe and all that kind of thing, which does actually set itself apart from Souls enough to make it really, really fascinating and interesting. Because, one of the very first quests at the beginning, which is, minor spoiler, but you basically go rescue Geppetto. Because Geppetto, who, if you know the story of Pinocchio, is the carpenter who makes Pinocchio. But in this story, he's the guy who invented puppets, and basically he's the reason why there are puppets in the city and why everything is using automatons and that kind of thing. So since they've gone mental, he's kind of in danger. So your first job is to basically go rescue him, and you bring him back to the hotel, and he's like an NPC who helps you out throughout the game. But even though no one's called you Pinocchio, he refers to you as his son and that sort of thing. So you kind of go, I must be Pinocchio. But coming back now to what you were talking about before, Paula, with the ergo kind of corrupting the other puppets and that kind of thing. Basically, the world is in a state where you're either a puppet or a human, and puppets can't lie, like they tell the truth. So in certain scenarios, you'll be asked a question where you can choose to either lie or tell the truth. And it's like on a timer, so you don't get time to think about it too much. You just kind of got to go with it. And the very first one is to get into this hotel, which is the hub. And again, minor spoiler, but to get into the hotel, they ask you, are you a puppet or a human? And it's a human refuge, so they don't want puppets in there. So you can either lie and say, yes, I am a human, or you can tell the truth and say, I'm a puppet. And when you do that, you get a message come up on screen saying that like your parts are starting to reform and the mechanics that make up who you are distorting. And so every time you get to asked to make a decision that involves lying or telling the truth, it actually has a as yet unknown effect on your character. I kind of spoiled myself a little bit, so I kind of know what happens, but it does kind of have a lasting effect that kind of goes into the very end game. And depending on your choices along the way, you kind of end up going down one path or the other kind of thing. But it's a really interesting mechanic because some of the humans are happy to see you because you're human enough that they trust you and they want to work with you and that kind of thing. But then some of the puppets are happy to see you because you're enough of a puppet to, be one of them, and vice versa. Sometimes you meet humans who don't want to have anything to do with you because you are a puppet, and sometimes you meet puppets who don't want to have anything to do with you because you seem too human-like. And there's some really fun parts during the game where you meet NPCs in the world who are quote-unquote stalkers, which is what you are as well. And basically stalkers is the name that they've given to humans who go out and hunt puppets. And because you're working your way through the city and like defeating bosses and doing all this kind of stuff, they all take you as a stalker, and you meet other stalkers who all are dressed up in fancy clothes and have big weapons, and they all wear like animal masks. So there's a couple which one of them's a black cat and one of them's a red fox, and they're really fun when you talk to them because they like get all sassy with you and they're like, we're the best stalkers out here kind of thing. Bet you can't get through this level, essentially. And then you do, and you meet them later and they're like, oh wow, you're actually pretty cool. Let's hang out. and it's a lot of fun actually. But yeah, I don't want to go too much further because details. Suffice to say that all that kind of stuff contributes to this really fun and in-depth kind of steampunk world that you're playing in. And the thing that keeps driving me on, that I'm just like, oh man, I got to play some more, I can't get enough, is uncovering all that lore and all that background story. And there's enough kind of mystery that I don't know everything, and there seems to be enough depth that there's still plenty to find out. And I think I'm about halfway to a bit over halfway through the game. I think I've just finished chapter 7. And from memory, I think there might be like 12 chapters or something all up.
You started it this week.
I'm getting there.
Haven't you?
Yeah.
Oh
I've played it a lot. I pretty much every day I've been playing this for like at least a few hours. So yeah. But it's really good. I mean, we talked last week or the week before about I've been in the mood to play some Souls-like, so I picked up Lords of the Fallen and Wolong again. I haven't even touched them since this game came out. So this is definitely scratching that itch big time. And I'm really looking forward to finishing it and seeing where it goes, because just the atmosphere and everything. Like, the city's always raining, and so you're wet. There's one boss fight where I don't know if have you played Dark Souls? I can't remember.
I've played like the first boss fight of the first Dark Souls game.
Okay. Well, there is a boss fight in Dark Souls which is very famous, where you fight two bosses at the same time,
battle.
basically. Okay. Imagine me losing my shit when in this game you fight 4 bosses at the same time.
Excuse me?
And it's this huge arena, and it's raining, and it's this gothic kind of city, and there's like water up to your ankles, so you're splashing around all the place, and there's like just dudes coming at you from every side. It's really good. It's really, really good.
God damn it.
And it's so much fun. And they're all talking shit as well while you're fighting them. And it's really good.
Just
yeah.
out of curiosity, does it have like a Blacktown / swamp area? Oh no,
Kind of.
it is a Dark Souls game.
It's yeah. That's what I mean. Like, I don't want that to sound like a negative thing, because if anything, it's really good, because they've done it in such a way that I'm not annoyed at the similarities. Like, there's a whole lot of stuff I haven't mentioned. Like, yes, you can pick up throwable weapons. There's a healing item that you can upgrade and get more of as you go. There's different weapons that you get along the way, so you can kind of decide what kind of weapon you want to use. Instead of armor, you do find parts for your puppetry. So you're a mechanical puppet. So you find like different mechanical parts that upgrade your body, and that makes you more like resistant to physical damage or acid damage or fire damage or whatever. But it basically has the same function as armor does in other games. So that's kind of cool, because that's a little bit different way of doing the same thing. You don't actually put on armor; you just kind of upgrade parts to your body, which is cool. But yeah, there's like you work your way through the city, so there's all the city kind of stuff. But eventually, you get outside of the city, and you go to the old town, which is like this rundown Shitsville. And there's like a sewer kind of area as well, which is disgusting and kind of dank. There's nothing that's been as annoying as, say, like a Blight Town or something, where you're constantly getting poison damage or anything. But, well, no, having said that, there was an area where, again, they don't have poison as such. They call it blight. Or is it blight? Or am I just thinking that because of Blight Town? Oh, it's a different substance. I can't remember what it is. But anyway, there is an area where that is kind of everywhere. And part of the point of that area is to get rid of the infection, so to speak. Because not only, one thing I forgot from the story, not only are the puppets killing everyone, but the humans are all getting infected with a disease which basically kills them anyway and turns them into weird abomination kind of monster things. So there are monsters in the game as well, but they're kind of like humans who've died and mutated and turned into freaky deakies. But it's just, I could go on and on, but I won't. It's a really, really good game. It's one of the best Souls-likes I've played in a long time. It makes me feel as satisfied as playing Bloodborne, although it's probably easier because I still haven't finished Bloodborne. I keep going back to it every now and then, but it's just so hard. So Lies of P seems to be a little bit easier, but very, very satisfying and lots of fun to play. So I'm going to continue playing that, and part of me kind of feels like I might even have it finished by next week. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think that's enough about that.
Well then, why don't we go to our discussion topic of this week? Coping with the void life after completing a really great game. What do you do after the void settles in?
Well, it's just as an initial thought, I was thinking about this before we started recording, and I thought, when I finish Lies of P, I know I'm going to have a little bit of separation anxiety. I'm going to feel like I've lost something, and that void is going to come about, and I'm probably going to try it by continuing to play Lords of the Fallen and Wo Long or something like that, and not be satisfied. So I'm kind of leading up to a void, I think.
You're on the way to diving into the void.
Yeah. But you mentioned earlier, Paula, you finished something that kind of left you feeling like you wanted more.
No,
Was that Kingdom New Lands?
Well, Subsurface Circular kind of like left me a little bit
that's
like,
right.
Well, it is over, now what? But one game that I finished a while ago, that was when I first talked about this idea for a topic, was Radiant Tail.
Yes, that's right.
The void was so powerful that after finishing the game, I was like, hey, I finished everything in the game. I just lied there staring at the ceiling, trying to think what to do with my life. So sometimes when that happens, I really can't pick up a game controller for the rest of the day. Was
Yeah.
the case on that occasion, but sometimes I ended up feeling like inspired and look at, I don't know, um, fan art, fanfic, and all kinds of fan forums about the game. Try to feed my need for the game. It's like
Mm.
when you're hangover and you have to drink a beer for it to be a little bit less hangover-y. I don't know. And
Yeah.
so I try to fill the void interacting with the fandom a little bit. Or sometimes I get into
Mhm.
fan art myself. So, well, I haven't finished it because it is for Automactober. Which, by the way, I have my own version of Inktober, which is called Automactober. So I draw Automa
Yeah.
characters
Awesome.
every day of the month, hopefully. So in my case,
Nice.
and it ended up inspiring a lot of the prompts on Automactober for this year.
Awesome.
Um, so it kind of permeates my life for a little bit, and then I have to eventually move on. So I try to jump into more comfort games or like something that has like nothing related, so I can put my mind out of the game for a little bit, and then go back into the genre with fresh eyes,
Mm.
and not with that almost yearning of you're not that game.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Well, and I think you're right, as in, like, sometimes the best thing is to not play anything. And sometimes I might finish a game, like, I feel like Liza P might be like this, actually, to be fair, where you finish it and you're either, but you've just been so into it and you've just been so hooked on it that, yeah, you get that kind of almost feeling of loss when you finish and you're like, oh, I wish it just keep going because I'm enjoying myself. Um, but I don't want to play any other game because it's like nothing else will really fit that, scratch that itch, to
Yeah.
use that term again. Um, so I find I tend to then, like, I might just go read a book or something and just play less
True.
games for a few days.
And what kind of game does it happen with? Like, for example, there's two cases. Like, either the story was super engaging, and after like a week or so of intensive gaming, I finish the game, and then I'm like, now what? But it has happened to me like with Breath of the Wild when it first came out, that I played that game for months. Not necessarily like playing a lot each day, like an hour or so
Mm.
each day. And when I finally finished it, it was a part of my routine going down the drain. Like,
Yeah.
now what do I do in that time?
That's true, yeah. I mean, I was thinking about it and I thought it's not really any one thing. Like, it's not even necessarily good games, but which I'll explain. But I find I get it from either, well, one example is, like, there's a game called Blackwood Crossing,
Mhm.
which is a little, just like 2 hour thing that, or thereabouts, that is a little indie game. It's pretty, it's kind of like a surreal story about a relationship between a brother and a sister. And it's one of my favorite little indie games ever because it's also one of the most emotionally fraught responses I've ever had in a game. Maybe because I'm a younger brother and I have an older sister, so I could kind of relate to the story a little bit. Um, but oh, I cried my eyes out and I was so sad at that ending and that whole game. Um, and that game was just so impactful and had so much meaning for me. And I had such an experience, quote unquote, playing it that I don't think I played a game for like a week at least after playing that because I just needed to chill and and like let it simmer in my mind and let those emotions kind of, you know, process uh, over some time. So when it's that kind of game where it has that kind of huge impact, it's like, oh, I just want to like let it simmer and let my subconscious kind of work itself out, and have a meditate on it a little bit, and
Yeah,
let those emotions kind of work their way through my body.
that kind of happened to me when I played Ace Attorney Mel's Edgeworld Investigations 2.
Yeah.
Like the theme of the game kind of like fell onto me like at the right time when I was like facing a related conundrum in my life.
Mm.
So in a way, it felt almost life changing. Like, does it ever happen when you play a game and it changes something you like playing outright?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of game, it could be anything. Like it could be a big blockbustery type thing, or it could be like a little indie game that just happens to hit the right, kind of poke you in the right way. And I think that's why I like those small kind of indie stories, because they often do get quite personal and emotional, and they're happy to perhaps even be a little bit alienating. Like using Blackwood Crossing as another, using it as again as an example. I know there are people who played it who just didn't get anything from that game and didn't relate to it and thought it was like, oh yeah, it's a pretty average whatever kind of game. But for some reason, just the nuance of the story and the way they presented it and everything, it just, man, I don't think a game has hit me harder than that one. But that's, fantastic. I love that. I love that ability of storytelling to kind of make you experience things in that sort of way. But to kind of go on the ultimate flip side of that, how there were those games that you just kind of lose yourself in. No matter, it doesn't matter. They don't have to be brilliant games or anything, but you just kind of, you start playing and the time just flies by, and you don't realize that you've spent 5 hours playing because it feels like half an hour or something.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, so I figure those sorts of games are always like, they're the kind of game that you're just in the mood for at that particular time. And for me, a recent one was the new Saints Row game, which has a lot of problems and is not the best game ever. And in the Saints Row series, it's kind of shit. But I like that open world grind and loop that is in the game. And I picked it up at a time when I hadn't played anything like that for a while. So it just kind of hooked me in the right way. And I played it every day. And it took a while to get through because there's a lot to do. And, by the time I'd finished, I was just like, yeah, the game wasn't amazing. It's not one that blew my mind or changed my life. But it just was right for what I wanted out of my entertainment for that moment. And when it finished, I did feel a bit like, oh, that's all it is, and there's nothing else to replace it. And I felt kind of sad because there just wasn't anything else like it that I could play at the time that I hadn't already played.
Yeah, that happened when I played Timberborn. It's still like a short-ish game if you go like for specific objectives, but
Yeah.
still, I've seen a lot of city builders, but none like it. So it's kind of like a shame that I finished it. Like at the very least, I finished like all the content with one of the beaver races, types, civilizations. I don't know. So it was like, now what?
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to have to play Timberborn because I kind of felt the same way after playing Banished. I don't know if you ever played that one, but it's a colony builder thing where you just kind of fill the map and you get more and more people, which makes it more and more unstable. And Banished is famous for the whole, everything can end really quickly because if you get sickness and don't deal with it like right away, your entire town gets sick and everyone dies and no one does any work and it's over. But when you get into the end game, it does start getting. You should know what you're doing enough that you can kind of like
act quickly now.
Keep it rolling quite easily enough, yeah. Or you've already prepared enough for any problems that might happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that game so much. That was so much fun and challenging as well. And I felt like a bit of a genius for having done well. even though I'm probably not. But anyway, but the kind of end goal to that game for me was just to fill the map, because there's a big map. You start off with a tiny little town in the middle, and you expand and go bigger. But that's the hard part, because that's always very much on a knife's edge, because if you expand too quickly, you don't have the resources and all that kind of stuff. But if you expand too slowly, you're not gaining enough to kind of maintain your growth, and because there's seasons and all this kind of stuff. So when you head into winter, you need to have food stockpiled and all that kind of thing, and you need to keep everyone healthy and blah 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 blah. But yeah, I was so invested in that game, and I managed to fill out the entire map, and I had like the biggest population you can get, and yeah, it was really, really satisfying. And when I ran out of things to do, and I eventually had to kind of, I could either keep playing the game and just kind of ticking over doing the same thing, which is boring because I filled up the map, or I had to kind of go, okay, I've finished it now, I need to close it and go do something else. and when I did that, I was like, oh yeah, I almost started playing it again, because I was just like, I miss doing that every day. And checking in and, seeing how my people are going.
Yeah, that happens a lot. With Surface Circle, I kind of like throwing a card with me, because it was like, hey, this seems like a future we're heading into. So kind of like that, an easy note in my heart when I finish it.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't think I have anything more to add to the topic.
Well, I think that just as a final thought, it's kind of like sometimes playing a different game, like something completely different, is enough to kind of just get me through, I find. Like, if I have played something highly emotional, maybe going and playing a racing game for a week is the way to go, where there's no emotions, there's no story, you're literally just pushing buttons. Or I find doing something completely different, like I say, going and reading a book, or hell, just go and hang out with some friends or something, I don't know, but doing something other than a video game is a good way to kind of shake off the remnants of something that's really kind of stayed with you. But those experiences are the best, though.
Yeah, or just going doubling down on it and doing something related for a bit, and then let it like fizzle away as you get over it.
Well, I like what you said about doing extra stuff, like doing some fan art or something. Like, yeah, that seems like a good way to kind of still keep in the mood, but obviously do something different and put that energy elsewhere. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm sure everyone has different ways of dealing with that kind of gaming loss, you could call it. But yeah, it's a strange one. Yeah. But I think we're all kind of privileged to have anything impact us, and it's kind of, that's the beauty of telling stories and relating to people. And
for it being like a problem, if you have to be quite privileged.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, I guess. So, now's my chance. I'm about to nail this guess in our game and get all the points. So, Paula, take it away.
Okay, so for this game, this is actually kind of like a shorter one. Let me look at the overall completions, or do I just read the time of the one completion and getting the note from?
It's up to you.
Okay, so this game is, let me go to the overview. Well, this is about 11 hours for the main story. Well, this person in particular to like kind of speedrun it on 5 hours and 32 minutes. And the note says,
5 hours, okay.
It's a little tough towards the end. Also hate saving those stupid pink ball creatures just to move on.
Can you repeat that for me?
Gets a little tough towards the end. Also, I hate saving those stupid pink ball creatures just to move on.
Pink ball creatures?
Pink ball creatures.
Okay. It's not something like Slime Rancher.
Nope.
I'm just thinking of pink bally creatures.
I you can farm them. You don't have, well, you can save them from a
true.
from a monster, but
yeah. If anything, you capture them, don't you?
yeah, you rob them of their freedom.
Kind of the opposite.
They need saving from you.
Yeah. Got challenging at the end. Didn't save all the pink ball creatures. And 5 hours and a possible 11, hey? Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm just reading the notes. Some of them are kind of fun.
Cool. Trying to just think of games that have like pinky creatures that you save.
Yeah, I'm trying to see, and it seems they actually have a name, but a lot of people just call them pink ball or pink fellas or pink something or pink things.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say that I have a clue, but I don't think I do.
I'm trying to...
I'm not very good at this, apparently. Which is cool. But,
yeah, I'm trying to...
Saving pink dudes.
Yeah. I love this comment.
Yeah, I'm gonna need more.
Okay, let me pick one because... I think this one is kind of like, it doesn't say too much, but they didn't give it away, but I'm gonna go with this one. It says 207 out of the 246 Electoons. All 10 school teeth and completed blank levels.
What was the first one? The 200 and what out of whatever what?
Electoons.
Elections,
like ELECTOONS. Electoons, like in cartoons.
Ah, bloody hell. I feel like that should give it away, but and what was the rest of it, sorry?
All 10 school teeth and completed Leave It Dead levels. This person took 12 hours and 54 minutes to finish the game. Also gotta say, this game is in a lot of platforms.
I feel like I should know what Electoons are, especially if there's like 200 and something to collect.
I'm gonna take a look if you left any comments on this one.
I mean, I usually do, but unless it was a while ago, I might not have.
Yeah, let me check real quick, like, which completion was it for you?
Says, didn't do anything, not going to remember this game. So there's pink dudes. So do you know if the Electoons are the pink dudes?
Let me actually they look pink, yeah, they're pink.
Okay, it couldn't be something like Overlord. I don't think I even finished that, so...
Wow, you speedrun this game. You didn't submit any comments, but it took you 5 hours and 42 minutes and you played it on PC. That doesn't say anything because you play a lot of games on PC, but...
True, most of my games are on PC, but and there are some types of games where I do find I get through them a lot quicker than the times on how long to beat. Like, there are certain genres, I think, for everyone where you're always a bit quicker or slower or something. And this must have been one where I was quicker.
Electoons.
And the other bit was golden something?
Skull teeth.
Is that gold teeth?
Skull, like cranium, skull.
Ah, skull teeth. Oh. Skull teeth. That really feels like it should tell me something.
Yeah.
Man, my brain has gone smooth. Every time I do this, my brain's just like, yeah, nah, screw you, we're out of here. Yeah, honestly, I got nothing, and I don't want to sit here all night pretending like I don't.
Okay, so this final note is 24 hours and 11 minutes. Got all the elections, sculpted, 10 out of 10. All medallions are all speed trophies. Land of the living dead beaten. Land of livid dead beaten.
Okay.
Come on.
I can feel I'm gonna like kill myself when I find out what this is. Holy moly. Night of the Living Dead level.
Just for your information, this game is available in many platforms like PC, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PlayStation Vita, Wii, Nintendo 3DS, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4.
Damn, so it had a bit of a life as well. Yeah, it's not going to happen. I have no idea.
I thought I chose it one that would be easier. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's not your fault. It's my dumb head.
Okay, it is... do I say it?
Yeah, I'm out. I'm done.
It's Rayman Origins.
Ah, that's why I don't remember that game at all. That would make sense. Yeah, I did just rush through that because I just kind of rushed through it. I didn't bother. I kind of played that game very mindlessly. So I'm not surprised that I don't remember much about it.
God damn it.
But that's the skull teeth now. That makes sense, yeah. Oh, well, nope.
And the pink blobs.
Yeah,
no?
Yeah. Man, Rayman games. That's one of those franchises which I've always heard about and has always been famous, but like, that's the only game I've played of it. And I don't even remember it that well, because I don't think it made that much of an impression. But, oh well.
I'm gonna have to pick something else like in a couple of weeks that you've actually played for longer.
Oh man, I'm sorry. It's gotta suck listening to someone just have no idea what the hell they're talking about. But fair enough. I'll take it. You know. But yeah.
Get 0 points this week.
Damn. I feel like I'm.
Have a nice day, sir.
I'm gonna get beat. Yeah. I have to find. See, you're trying to find something easy for me. I'm gonna have to try and find something really hard for you. That's what it's going to turn into. Oh man, Rayman Legends. I should probably have a little look over my completion list one day, just to remind myself.
Should probably help.
Like, just in general, maybe put something into my head about each game I've finished. Because I think...
Then your brain is going to go in vacation next time. Yes, like, nope.
Yeah. I'll list off like 100 games which are wrong. Instead of having no idea at all. Oh, man. But, oh, there we go. No more points for me. We're still on 8 for Paula, 3 for me. That's where it's going to stand for now. How disappointing. But, oh well.
Sad times.
That's how it works. Well, and...
Sad Josh knows this.
Yeah, insert here. I was thinking about it, and this is not me having a whinge or anything at all. But I was thinking, like, there are, like, 1,400, 1,300 games on my completion list. So that's a lot of stuff to remember. And I know that you're not obviously using obscure stuff because why would you? And there's probably not enough comments for it anyway. So you can probably cut out half of them. But yeah, I was thinking about it the other day. I thought, man, kind of got a handicap there, but I'll take it. It's okay. It was my idea anyway.
I'm gonna try to go for more recent stuff because I think this one you did. I don't know when you did.
It was a while ago.
This one. Let me check real quick. Yeah.
Well, I'm saying pre-pandemic.
Whoa, 2017.
Yeah, there you go. That was long enough ago.
April.
And yeah, I think I did kind of not speed run it, but just kind of do the bare minimum.
Yeah, you didn't even put completion notes on it.
Nope. Yeah. So there you go. Oh well, I'll remember it now. I'll probably never forget that they're called bloody. What are they called? Ectoons or whatever? I don't know. Little pink guys. Yeah. that kind of wraps us up for this week. Thanks for struggling through with me, everybody who's listening, because, boy, that felt like pulling teeth.
You tried.
But hopefully it's amusing anyway, because, yeah, being dumb is fun sometimes. But
Well, and see you everyone next week too.
Yep. Catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
So long. It's really good. It's really, really good.